Sorry.
And I just thought, why am I creating stories and making things up? It's not that I don't have imagination. It's just that my own life presented more drama than I could invent. I was also wrestling with processing what had happened, as well as looking at how do I continue to write. So those two things kind of converged.
Again, you Am I Still a Mother is the title of the book. Surviving Life's Cruellest Tragedy Twice. Helen Bouchami is the author and my guest. Again, I can't help myself from jumping around. When you say processing it, you lost two sons. Yeah. Unimaginable for someone to lose a child. I've done a lot of shows on dying and grief. I had a friend of mine whose mom was, I think, 93 and passed away earlier this week. That's his mom. And again, I'm not minimizing it for any, because I can say, I can say, if someone loses somebody when they're young, and I'll say mom, if you lose your mom and you're, I don't know, 16, 20, 30, yeah, it's tragic. It's horrible. If you lose your mom and you're 70, you've had that much more time and with them. So, but any death is tragic for people, of course. But twice, they always say to lose a child is the worst. Yeah. And I certainly have got to believe that. Helen, if you don't mind, I remember when a friend of mine, son died, and this was a number of years back, and we were in line at the funeral home, and I knew the guy that was in front of me, and he said to our friend Ralph, he said, "Ralph, I know how you feel," and I know he meant it lovingly. I know he meant it trying to give. I know, but it just kind of bristled. I bristled a bit, thinking. And two things, and I hope you're not offended by this. I don't want to know how you feel. I mean, I want to try to be here for you, but it's the unimaginable. And again, caveat again, I know people, we so want to take away or help somebody, support them. And can I carry your pain for a little bit? I'll carry it. I'll carry it a little bit. Let me carry part of it. And we say something like, "I'm so sorry." And, people are sincere, but there is, or you tell me, nothing that anyone's going to say. Certainly, if I say I'm sorry to you, it doesn't make your pain any easier. Am I making any sense?
Yeah, I think it's better in a way to keep it very simple, because sometimes some of the things that people offer in a genuine and sincere attempt to be comforting, to say they're in a better place. Or things like this. Just I communicate with other bereaved parents. They found these things very difficult to deal with, and it's unintentionally hurtful. The best response I had, actually, that was somebody I was dating at the time, and he just came round and he held me. He didn't say anything. He just held me. And I did find that very comforting.
That's, yeah, because again, knowing there's nothing we can say, we'd like something, but again, holding you, something, being there, being present. Well, Dr. Catherine Mannix from the UK, who's written a lot about a death and dying, would always say, just take a pie over. I'll never forget when she said that. Just take a pie, and if they want to invite you in, if that's fine. If not, let them have the pie and leave. Yeah. But being there, being supportive, just being present, correct?
Yeah, I think the practical things, especially in the early days, because you're walking around like a zombie, you just don't know what you do. I have no idea how I ate, what I did, I had people with me the whole first week, and
Yeah.
it helped because they were clearly taking over running my home for me.
Yeah.
But I can't even remember, but I know I wasn't alone during that week.
And then people, understandably, are not there. I shouldn't say understandably. And then you're left with.
Yeah. I told them to go actually after a week.
Yeah.
I just needed some space. But there's quite a big difference between the deaths of my two sons. And when I lost the second one, my younger boy, it was a shock. You know, the first one, we had what we call anticipatory grieving. He'd been sick for several years, and we could see things were deteriorating.
Leukemia, correct?
Yeah, leukemia and complications of
leukemia.
So we kind of we hoped for the very last minute for a miracle, but you've got a double think that on the one hand you know what's happening, and on the other hand you're desperately praying that something will happen that will save them. But first of all, we were all together. I still had a son. There were 4 of us around his bed when he died. We supported each other. Radar was a complete shock. I found him. That was horrific. And the other thing is it posed this question of identity, which is in the title of the book. I've been a mother for 40 years. No, I didn't have children. So who was I? That was feeling very alone in life, not sure of who I was anymore, with different feelings. The shock and the identity issues were specific to the second death. And to be honest, I was in shock for 6 months. It only hit me 6 months later what had happened. I functioned.
Yeah, tell us about that a little bit, Helen. You were in shock for 6 months and then it hit you.
When I got on with doing things, because that's what I do. You know, I organize things, I do things, and it was kind of autopilot. So from the outside, people would think, oh, she's doing okay. But inside, it was this numbness, this kind of zombie-like. It's almost like a sleepwalker. When people are sleepwalking, they can go and do quite normal things, start doing the washing up or things like this, and it looks like they're fine, but they're not. They're not really there in a way. And that's kind of how I felt. And it triggered at, I've written this in the book, at a Christmas party that I'd actually organized for this social group. And it just suddenly hit me. And I spent the whole weekend absolutely in pieces and felt so desperately alone. You know, that's kind of when I think nature in a way looks after you and protects you from the shock, from the impact for a while. So you have this numbness, this, you know, not functioning properly, just looking on the surface as if you are.
Yeah, appearing on the outside that you've got it together, and inside you were shocked, you fell apart. Yeah. After that 6 months, what was it like for you when you kind of came out? I don't want to say came out of the shock, when you started to
realize
process,
what had happened in my life. There was a very profound sense of being alone in life. Now, it's different from feeling lonely. I'm not lonely. I have friends, I have neighbors.
Sure.
But alone in life, it's like I'm not anybody's priority. If I need something, I'm not saying nobody would help me.
Sure.
But it's not the same as my sons would. You know, if I, for example, ended up in hospital and they were due to go on holiday, they'd probably cancel their holiday. But friends don't do that. If they're free and able to help, they will. And I have great friends and I have great neighbors, and I'm not lacking in support. But I didn't have my parents because my dad died a week before my younger boy. My mum had died some years before that. She died relatively young. I don't have a partner, and I'm estranged from my only brother. So I still feel I've come to terms with it better, but I still feel quite alone in life.
The title of the book is Am I Still a Mother? Surviving Life's Cruellest Tragedy Twice. Helen Bouchami is the author and my guest. You can, wherever you get books, I mean, Amazon certainly is quick, and other sources for books, you can get it. And it's I don't know quite, again, I'm not a wordsmith, I'm not a writer, I don't always put words together well, as my audience certainly knows. It's, to say something like it's a powerful read, it impacted me deeply, which is true, but it's so different. And again, the title, Am I Still a Mother? After you've lost 2 sons. And it's again, I've read a lot of books on death and dying. This is entirely different. This is the process, what happened. And again, your writing style, I'm going to say once again, is fantastic. You were saying you're without a partner, but you did have a partner. And I don't want to be horribly critical of him, but you read the book, you'll find out. What can you tell us about Allah?
About my ex-husband?
Yes.
Oh, well, we had been divorced for quite some time by then. And we'd had a lot of issues, really from when he remarried, because the very early part of our divorce was kind of okay. But it started to become difficult, withdrawing funding for the boys and not really seeing them regularly, made life a little tricky. She wasn't very nice to them either. And because they used to go and see him every holiday, every school holiday, they used to go over to see their father. He lived abroad. But when our older boy, Munir, became ill, when he was diagnosed, I thought, whatever has happened in the past, I have to put that behind me, because now we have to cooperate in supporting our son. And as it turned out, our sons, plural, because Rada also had his health issues. And he rallied in terms of certainly financial support at that point. I was left dealing with a lot of the practical stuff, practical care and support, a lot of the emotional stuff. But to be fair to him, he also, at the later stages, had his own health problems. He had cancer.
When you write about the names, again, I mean, it's lighthearted, but I love when you said, I want to give my children Algerian names. Checking my face for a reaction, I nodded, and you said, okay, so long as I can choose them.
Yeah.
You can deal with not having children, I can deal with Algerian names. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, well, my mother-in-law
compromise.
Call our older boy Badruddin. So I think it was a good call on my part.
The progress, and again, you obviously write about it in the book, with your son's diagnosis, cancer, with the doctors, etc. What do you want to share with us about that?
Well, he was, I've not put photographs in the book, but he was a very handsome, very fit, very active, positive person. And we just celebrated his 30th birthday. We'd been up to Blackpool, which is my hometown, which is a seaside resort. And he'd become very breathless, unusually so. And he thought he had to give up smoking. So he started having these lozenges to help him give up smoking. Then his gums started to bleed. And he just eventually became very sick. So I just got this call from his partner, his new partner. He just left a difficult marriage a few months before, and went to the hospital that day. And that was the first time they mentioned the word leukemia. And I mention it in the book, that quite unusually, actually, because generally speaking, the hospital care was wonderful, really wonderful. And of course, in the UK, free. We didn't have to pay a penny for his care.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, God knows how much it cost, because it was just so much involved in his care. It's very complex. But this nurse, I stopped her. This was the very first day when they mentioned leukemia, and I stopped her in the corridor and said, he's putting on a very good front, but I can see he's scared. And she said to me, yes, poor boy, he's probably wondering if he'll see Christmas. And I nearly fell over. It was the 29th of November. So I knew leukemia was serious. I knew that it was potentially life-threatening, but I didn't know what the state of the cure rate was or anything like that. And the notion that he could be dead within weeks, I just couldn't take that in. That was hugely shocking. He was transferred to another ward the next day, and I can't fault them. They were wonderful, wonderful.
That wasn't your experience medically when you were Algeria. That wasn't your experience.
When I was in Algeria, no, it was.
It was
when I arrived in Algeria, somebody said to me, "It's a beautiful country as long as you stay out of the hands of the doctors and the police."
Yes, yeah.
That was pretty correct.
Yeah, it was interesting, and it was very accurate.
Yeah,
from your experience, correct, Helen?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
I loved when you described about having your legs up in the stirrups, and there was no blinds on the windows, and there was people, that was, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say it was funny, but to be in that position that you were in, and then realizing that, and then they say, and I don't have it written down, but they don't look anymore.
It was the apartment block opposite, and this was about 9:30 at night, so all the lights were on, families were at home. It was during Ramadan, so everyone's having their evening meal. And I could see these families sitting around their table, around the television set, opposite because it was central Algiers, opposite. And I said, "Oh, you're going to close the blinds?" And they said, "Oh, they don't bother looking anymore."
I thought that was, and again, I'm sure that was a horrible experience at the time when you realized that, but it was a lighthearted moment. I had a laugh, in the book. And again, it was just the way you described it. And I'm not going to go over and over it again, but the way you described yourself, and then they don't look anymore. No worries. They don't look.
I do have a sense of humor, and the book wouldn't do to me unless that came through, even though I'm describing some tragic events. Sometimes you have a quirky look at things, and it amuses you. And you have to let that part come through. You
have to survive.
Yes.
For you.
Yeah.
The tragedies that you've had in your life, that you again write brilliantly about in your book, Am I Still a Mother? Surviving Life's Cruellest Tragedy Twice. And I'm not going to go from event to event. You read the book and you will see how powerful it is. I also liked when the self-examination, the hard look, if you don't mind, the look in the mirror. I always say people want to point the finger, but fear the mirror. This is entirely a different, but your self-examination, how you write about it is incredible. You take I don't want to say a hard look, a deep look at yourself.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, I've learned a lot about memoir as a genre, and if it doesn't have reflection in it, if the person doesn't show how they've changed through the course of this, and it's as much about survival of these events as about the events themselves, then it is shallow. I think it was good that it took me longer. One of the things they say about memoir, especially about trauma, is write from the scar, not from the wound. So leaving some time to gain perspective on what happened, I think is important.
You also write, again, one of the places where I have marked your self-examination, when you were told about in remission.
Yes.
And you write, if you don't mind quoting you, I don't want you to have to look at all up in the book and read them, but you He said, I let out a long exhale, my body sagging and softening like a deflated souffle. Again, your writing is incredible. But you write, why was I not more elated? Wasn't this what I had prayed for, begged for?
Yeah,
Can-
it was almost, oh, thank goodness we didn't know the day he was diagnosed what that journey would be with him, because I don't think we could have dealt with it. And there are so many ups and downs in leukemia treatment. Anybody of your listeners who's been through that or other cancer treatments, you know, it's like one day his bloods were down and then they were okay. And then, you know, and then you get your next round of chemo and down it goes again. And the first phase where she said, you know, he might die before Christmas was because not every leukemia patient gets into remission. You know, with the acute forms of leukemia, chronic forms you have a lot longer, but some don't make it into remission. And that was just a huge step. But it was almost like you had to protect yourself a bit emotionally, because you'd be all over the place every day. With every time the bloods went down, you'd be, oh, and then they were up, you'd be celebrating. And we just took it one step by one step by one step. Yeah.
You did, even knowing it remission, because there's so many challenges, you know, when you're in remission, you, how do I want to say it, kind of protected yourself. We didn't want to be too elated.
Yeah,
very
you
serious.
got out of the woods. Remission is remission, it's not cure.
Yes.
But that is a major first step. Like I said, not everybody makes it. So that was pretty important. But we knew there's a long journey ahead. You know, he needed to be on maintenance regimes. There's a risk of relapse at any time. We just had to, his attitude was formative there, really, because he said his motto was get busy living or get busy dying. And he really focused on living each day to the full within the constraints of his illness. And he was full of fun. He had a great sense of humor, and he was very popular with the staff, and he teased them mercilessly, and that was his entertainment, if you like. Yeah.
And probably his way of, for entertainment and dealing with it.
Yes.
Choosing, I guess, choosing
Yeah.
to, instead of sinking into sadness and depression, he chose to be.
Yeah, if anything helps me now, it's that sense of life is precious and you just have to live it as fully as you can. And if he had the courage to face that at 30, it gives me the courage to face what my life is now in my 70s.
Yeah, that's, again, that's difficult. Is beautifully stated. Beautifully stated. Helen Bouchami is my guest. The book, Am I Still a Mother? Surviving Life's Cruellest Tragedy Twice. Talk with us about Rita, if you will.
Sorry?
Your son, the Rita. Am I?
Rita.
Yeah.
Rita was, well, I called the first chapter when he was diagnosed, The Long Shadow, because it impacted all our lives. His father, his children, had 3 children, my grandchildren, and his brother. And Rada was a high flyer with a major corporation. He was traveling worldwide, driving a very nice car, a girlfriend, and flat in a trendy part of London. Very much the successful businessman. It floored him. It just floored him. And he went on to develop mental health problems and addiction problems. And again, it was up and down, the times when that got very difficult, and then there were times when he was doing pretty well. But that ultimately, led to his death.
Again, both sons passing away. It's just, again, the words unimaginable. Just as I was said earlier, people always say that's the hardest thing to deal with is the loss of a child.
Yeah.
It's 2, hence the title, Am I Still a Mother? Saturday, the 25th of June, 2011, 7 days that changed my world. Can you, and I don't want to say summarize, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we knew that my dad, he was in his 90s, he was approaching 94. We knew that he wasn't doing that great, big wonders. A doctor had been for an infection. He said he's not in great shape. Don't be surprised if one of these days you find that he's gone. So Rada and I have been up to visit him because you can't time these things. It's like 4-hour drive from where I live. And we'd spent some time with him. Anyway, that morning I got the call from the home where he was in a residential home. And they said, well, and he'd gone very peacefully. And it, as you say, it's different for an elderly parent, and it was expected. So, but there were things I had to sort out. So I met up with Rada, told him, and then I set up to Blackpool to, register the death and arrange the funeral and all of those things. When I came back, Rada was in a very different place than I left him. We'd had a chat, we'd had a laugh, we talked about his granddad. And when I came back, he was very defensive. He said he was grieving for his father, who died just at the end of May, and his granddad, and he needed to be left alone. So I thought, okay. So I kind of backed off from there. I was a little bit irritated, to be honest, because I could have done with more support. He lost his dad, but I just lost mine. But I thought, well, okay, I knew how close he was to his father. So I just thought I'll cut him some slack. And I just got on with things. I organised my dad's funeral, did the order of service, and I missed some calls from him. I'd gone to the cinema and left my phone behind. And when I got back, there were all these missed calls. And I got a message, and then I spoke to his friend Gino, who said, well, Rada was trying to contact you. He thought there's something wrong with your phone. So he wanted me to call to say he was okay. So I thought, okay, he's honored his commitment to stay in touch and let me know he's fine. But when I went to London the next day, I was a pre-existing arrangement and I needed a break. I was very anxious. I was calling every hour and I'm still not getting an answer. So when I got back to Reading about 10:30 at night, I went straight to his flat and I was ringing the bell, but I couldn't get in. I didn't have a key, and there was a gate into this little courtyard that I couldn't get through. I couldn't see in. And I thought, well, if he doesn't know who it is this late at night, he's perhaps not going to answer the door, which is fair enough. He lived in the centre of town. Who knows who's wandering around? So I thought, I can't do anything tonight. I didn't think, should I have called the police? Should we have broken down the door? Well, he could have just got out. He was an adult.
Yeah.
So I went home. I went straight back the next morning. I still couldn't rouse him. And I thought, because he'd said he wanted to be left alone. I thought, I don't care what he says.
Yeah.
I'm now anxious. I have to do something. So it was a rented flat. I went to the estate agent and said, you have to let me into the flat. I'm concerned about him. And he let me in through the gate, and immediately through the glazed door of the kitchen, I could see him on the floor. And as soon as I touched him, I knew he was dead. I just knew he was dead. And I screamed. I don't scream. I've never screamed. I was a little kid. Girls very often scream when they're playing. I've never done it. I couldn't stop. It just felt I was trying to expel this pain from my body. I just screamed and screamed and screamed. And this poor man from the estate agent was busy calling, the police, the ambulance, I don't know who he was calling. And then he said, you've got to come away. And it occurred to me, well, had something happened to him? Had somebody done this to him? Was it a crime scene? So I moved into the courtyard. I moved away from him. And then the police came, and the policeman confirmed that he was dead. I heard him report that. And I thought Rada had killed himself. That was my first thought, because of his distress over the loss of his father. And it was the policeman who first introduced the thought that, no, it probably wasn't true, but he hadn't intended it. He said, I've been to a lot of these, and you don't find them like that. they're lying on the sofa with music on, bottle of alcohol,
Yeah.
whatever. He said it's not that. And over the days after that, there are lots and lots of evidence that that was not the case, that he hadn't intended it. He'd ordered something off the internet, not a party drug, it was really something to calm him. If he'd been a drinker, he would have perhaps gone on an alcoholic binge for a few days. He just wanted out of it for a bit. And unfortunately, it was one of these very untested chemicals that the top lab in the country couldn't tell the coroner whether he was a lethal dose. They just didn't know. So they couldn't really say what had killed him. It could have been an open verdict. They said he was definitely not suicide, but it could have been, I don't know, a mixture. They said the most probable thing was a mixture with his prescription drugs and this thing he'd ordered from the internet, which is what I think killed him. So that was the conclusion of the inquest.
Helen, can I keep you just a little bit longer? You've got
Sure.
another 10 minutes or so. You sure? Okay. I'm sorry to ask you on air because I assured you I'd have you out by the top of the hour, but I'd just like to continue just a little bit if you're okay with that. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Louis B. Free Radio Show, Brain Food from the Heartland, copyright B. Free Radio Limited, 2022, produced by the lovely Miss Bunny Face in cooperation with White Rabbit Productions. I am speaking with the author of Am I Still a Mother? Surviving Life's Cruellest Tragedy. Twice. The author, Helen Bouchami, is my guest, and you can order this online where you get your books. It's a very, again, there's really no words. I have to tell you, if, and no one wants me to do a written review of a book, but it's, powerful, doesn't emotive. But it is a powerful read, and I think an important read to understand how your process. I hate to even call it a process, because of, and again, how you write about the earlier days and the latter days, I'll say. And again, thinking about some of that, how it's impacted you. I'm getting some, I want to say hi to Meggie Nosro, a wonderful author in Florida. Say hi to Ada. I'm getting some emails. And of course, I was going to get this closer to the end, but how do you manage today?
Well, I think the book is as much about how I've recovered, healed, and rebuilt my life, which doesn't happen overnight. Clearly, it doesn't happen overnight. With Munir, it took me about 3 years to start to think I need to do something about my life. And in a way, for all the shock and the numbness after Radar, I did have some things in place for me to build on or go back to that helped. And I find walking in nature hugely therapeutic. Writing is helpful. Writing the book was actually very painful at times, but having written it, I feel that I've dealt with things better. So it has had a positive outcome, even though it was painful. So I tend to think of it like therapy. Therapy isn't always fun, but you deal with stuff better afterwards, if it's a useful analogy. I'm now retired. I've been retired quite a few years. I have great friends and neighbors. I still enjoy my writing. I love to travel. I've got a big trip planned to Bolivia in November. Yeah, I'm still up for an adventure. Yes.
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I missed travel during lockdown, during COVID. But everybody was struggling with things one way or another. So I try to, have a life with friends, have a social life, travel. As I say, walking is very therapeutic for me.
When you say, again, a therapeutic to write the book, to put it out, I don't think anybody puts pen to paper anymore other than me. I write notes and things, but people probably write notes, but when you were writing the book, the pouring out, were there times that you had to stop? And obviously you didn't write it in one all at once. Of course. I don't, I didn't mean to imply that, but were there times due to what you were writing about that you needed to step away? And
I was a member of a local writers circle, and they're almost all fiction writers or poetry writers. And I read out a chapter that had been difficult for me to write. And one of the comments was, I thought it was a bit much that your dad died as well as your son. And I said, yeah, I thought it was a bit much myself at the time, which of course triggered a laugh and relief the atmosphere. That blocked me for 6 months. That comment blocked me for 6 months. I thought nobody's interested in reading this. And the other one, oddly enough, the chapter that was the most difficult to write emotionally was not so much when they died, because a lot of people have been around me and we talked about it, and it was a chapter when Raider was sent to a psychiatric hospital when he had a mental breakdown. That was just, I was on my own dealing with that. It's not something I talked about to everybody. Not everybody knew about it. I found that enormously difficult to write. I put that off for months.
And what, if I may ask, what got you back after that to continue?
The thing that helped me most was actually finding a group of fellow memoir writers. And it was in the United States, actually. It was an online program. And I did 3 of them back to back. And I just felt it was great to be with people who understood what writing memoir was about and how it's different from writing fiction. And I felt supported. If I was writing difficult stuff, I felt supported. So that was very helpful.
When the Samaritans you write about, and a lot of people in the States certainly aren't familiar with the Samaritans. When you talk about when you called and you said, I'm not suicidal.
Yeah.
I just need to talk. And you write about what led up to that. Do you mind for readers in the States or elsewhere telling us a little bit about the Samaritans? I'm familiar a little bit.
Yeah. With Samaritans, a lot of people connect to suicidal thoughts, so that if somebody, any time, day or night, it's a free phone number, they can call and talk to somebody. It isn't exclusively for the suicidal, which is often what people tend to think. And of course, I almost volunteered for them at one point, and I found out, of course, they do have all these stupid people who call, who don't need help and who just make obscene phone calls and things like this.
Really obscene? They call?
Yeah.
Samaritans?
Yes, yeah.
That's unconscious. I can't even fathom that. For that.
Yeah.
Really going to call the Samaritans that are there to help people in crisis and make an obscene phone call. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, they're there to listen empathetically. They don't give you advice or tell you what to do. They might trigger some emergency call if they think the person is on the verge of suicide or has taken tablets or something and needs that immediate help.
How was it for you that when you called?
I needed to talk. It was the night after I'd found Raider. My friend was sleeping downstairs. She'd come and pick me up from the flat, Raider's flat. She was great. And she'd made a lot of the phone calls to people to tell them what had happened. So I didn't want to go downstairs to disturb her. But I was just lying there, everything churning around in my brain. I just thought I need to talk to somebody. So they're there 24/7. So I found them. And first thing I said was, I'm not suicidal, I just need to talk. And I went back through Raider, through Munir, what had happened with Munir, the first death and his brother and what had just happened. And I can't even remember what they said to me. They listened, and then, active listening. So you knew they were with
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah.
Active
But
listening.
they weren't there to give you advice or
Yeah.
tell you what to do or any of these platitudes that people go out with. So they don't do any of that stuff. But they're trained, they're vetted, they're trained, and they, you know, it was very helpful.
Well, again, when you say that active listening, and I know exactly what you mean, because people are in many situations are, I think, thinking about what they're going to say next, and they're really not involved in hearing active, as you say, active listening. And that's wonderful. And like you say, they're trained, so they know. I've got just a couple of emails I want to address, and I'll try to get back to all the emailers, but you spoke earlier, and there's a few of these, so I'd like to address it again. We spoke, and you write in the book, obviously, not obviously, you write in the book, Am I Still a Mother? Sorry. Surviving life's cruelest tragedy twice, Helen Bouchami, about what people say, what shouldn't they say. And again, if you'll forgive me because of the emails that I'm getting, and you wrote about it in the book. Will you go back to that for a minute, and the suggestions that you make and what you shouldn't say? And
I think if you don't know what to say, it's very simple. You just say, I don't know what to say to you. I just want you to know I care. And rather than say, is there anything I can do, which people always do something. You know, as you said, take round a pie, offer to walk their dog, do whatever might help practically. I think comparing to your own grief, for example, oh, I know how you feel. I lost my grandma last year.
I cringe when I hear that.
I even had one of the worst things that was ever said to me. I was staying at a friend's sister's, and her cat had gone missing, and she was getting distraught. And she said to her brother, you don't understand, it's like losing a child. And I just retreated to my room. I just, how can somebody, well, obviously nobody who has a child would say that.
Yeah.
And people who don't have children often invest an awful lot of love into their pets. And of course I understand that. I've had pets, I love my pets, but it's, you know, there's just no comparison. You expect to lose a pet. They have a shorter lifespan than human beings. You don't expect to lose your children ahead of you. You really don't. And that's one of the difficult things about it. The other thing I'd say to people is don't avoid mentioning them. What parent doesn't like talking about their kids?
Say their name, right?
Yeah, so when I tell people, well, I lost my sons, it's like, how did they die? No, so no. Ask me how they lived. Ask me what they were like. Let me share some lovely memories of my sons. You know, that would be great. And yes, I might cry.
Sure.
But that's okay, you know.
That's beautiful. Ask me how they lived.
Yeah.
Don't ask me who would want to kick that up. And you are not, I'm always present with you, but who would want to, I honestly believe most people are well-intended by what they say, but maybe just not thoughtful when they say, I know how you feel. I think, again, I'm not being critical, but people need to think it's not your pain. It's not your pain. You're there.
Yeah, some people get more angry about it and upset and hurt. I tend to make allowances because I'm thinking back, did I know before this happened to me? Would I have known what to say to a bereaved parent? I don't know that I would. So you have to make allowances for people. But yeah, things like asking about what they were like is great. And like I said, just say, I don't know what to say, because I can't imagine, don't say, I know how you feel. I can't imagine how you feel. Unless you're another bereaved parent, then I think you can't actually say that.
And even, forgive me, Helen, you again, I'm asking, it's going to be different for everyone. Of course, there's going to be similarities in losing a child.
Yeah.
I got to believe there's differences too, certainly differences. And so they say they know how it feels to lose a child, but they don't for sure know how you feel. Correct?
Yeah, there is a common bond with anyone who's lost a child. They know the enormity of it. I'm on, there's an organization called the Compassionate Friends, which exists in the US. And that is very, very good. It's in the US. And there's a subgroup within it, which I tend to communicate with for childless parents. That is the parents who've lost their only child or all their children. And so I communicate, and also on Twitter, with quite a lot of bereaved parents. And some kids have murdered, others it was an automobile accident, others it was suicide, and different ages, from losing a little baby to losing an adult child. They are different in certain respects. And the deaths of my two boys were different. One was anticipated, I hope not, but we knew it was a possibility over several years, and the other was a complete shock. One left me with another child and still in my mother role. Then when the second one went, that had gone, still in my mother
role. And we've got a link up to your Twitter account also. It's twitter.com. What does that call that? Backslash. That's a backslash, right? Yeah.
Well, if you just go to Twitter and put in my name, as long as you know how to spell it, then you'd find me.
HelenBouchami. We also have that those linked up. And again, availability of the book on your platforms, wherever you get books, Amazon certainly. The response to your book. How does that? It's got to be. I see. Again, I'm lost for words. I don't want to say gratifying. Tell us about the response you're getting to the book.
Well, when I get feedback that says they think my writing's great, that's great. When I get response from another bereaved parent that says this has helped me, that warms my heart. That touches me, because I didn't write this with any intention of making money from it, just as well, because for an independent author, that's a pretty tough challenge. I wanted it to be widely read, and I wanted to feel that it resonated, that it meant something to people. And to have a fellow bereaved parent say, this has helped me heal. One woman on Twitter said, this is the first book I read since I lost my daughter, and that this has helped me. That is just wonderful. And the only reason I want it out there and would like to promote it more is so that people who might be helped by it can find it. It's not an ego trip to get the feedback and the reviews. It is making it visible to people who it might help.
And I believe me, reading the book and speaking with you, it certainly isn't an ego trip. And reading that, the brevities, the blog, writing what I don't remember, I've got that linked up also. Again, I know it's not an ego trip for you, and I hear that very clearly, Helen. That helping people, when someone says it, we're in a situation where they lost a child, I would help them. Again, it's got to be very, very gratifying. As I know, I don't have knowledge of. I certainly feel that writing it. Well, you described some of it before when you had to step away from it. It had to be, cathartic, therapeutic, as you said, for you. And then knowing it's helping others. It's got to be very wonderful for you. I have to tell you, I'm so impacted by your book. Am I still a mother surviving life's cruelest tragedy twice? Helen Bouchami and I were just very quickly where I was reading it initially was in waiting at a hospital locally, was where I started. There was going to be a procedure for someone, and I just couldn't do it there. I pushed forward because I got so emotional, so emotional by the way, Helen, that one of the staff came by to find out what would, if they could comfort me. Do you need a water? That's how. And I said, no, I'm just reading a book, and we talked about the book a little bit, and that's how powerful it is. So I want to thank you for doing the gig with me today, and for writing this out of your tragedies, both tragedies. I hope we can stay in touch, Helen Bouchami.
Yes.
I'm sorry. It's so unprofessional when I get emotional, but
Feel so guilty. Makes you guilty.
it is. Yeah. Thank you. It is. Yeah. Helen, thank you so much for who you are in the world, and certainly for writing Am I Still a Mother?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I certainly recommend the book, but it's even more than that. If you read the book,